Hello and welcome to the birth of a new dimension. My name is Aurora. I will be your host for this next hour, where I will be speaking about stars and the network of stellar consciousness of which myself and all of us are a part. Now, this also goes to the topic of stellar travelers, space races, and basically the network of consciousness as it is disseminated throughout the cosmos. And I am defining cosmos here as every possibility and every timeline. So the multiplicity of many dimensions and all of the things that can possibly happen anywhere. And part of this is a rewriting of the understanding of what the sun and stars are from the human viewpoint. And hopefully this conversation is an ongoing conversation, and that this is particularly culminating with some of the things I've spoken about on previous broadcasts, like the challenge in terms of giving birth to a new dimension, which is why I name this radio program what I have, because we are giving birth to a new format of matter, a new realm within which divergent forces and particles and aspects of consciousness can reside and interact. So the birth of a new dimension means that the level of density which you and your consciousness occupies will be coming together with beings from less dense realms and with beings from more dense realms. And this all matters. So you are matter, which is light that has the privilege of going slower than the speed of light. And you have been able to accumulate a certain number of atoms in your matter over your lifetime, right? If we say, you're an average human being, maybe you weigh about 150 pounds. So you have 150 pounds worth of atoms. And yes, you have your own personal gravity. And yes, you have a set of rules that corresponds with your personal realm. Brief pause. Well, the sun, and I'm standing in some beautiful sunshine right now as I record this, and the sun is beaming directly into my forehead. The sun and any star that we look at in the sky is similar to you in that it is a very, very large accumulation of atoms. However, when a lot of mass gets together, it starts to act differently. When there's a lot of matter gathered together in one place, different rules begin to be applied, or we could think of it that more possibilities are created. And the point that I'm making here is that the force that binds together the molecules or the atoms of your body, of your physical presence, it is consciousness. You have a certain amount of consciousness, and that's what makes your cells, first of all, work together as a multicellular organism, as opposed to a unicellular organism. An amoeba is a unicellular organism. Amoeba's like a punk rock, crusty punk. It's like, I'm out for number one. I'm an anarchist. Nobody tells me what to do, and I don't work for nobody. As opposed to your heart cells working in conjunction with your blood cells and your skin cells and all of your other specialized cells to make you, which is what you are, a multicellular organism. You got your cells to work together in concert. And you do that with consciousness. You have enough consciousness to hold together, a certain number of cells. It's, I think, roughly 3 trillion that make up your body, and all of the atoms and molecules of those cells are within your particular realm. It also means that your trajectory through time and space and consciousness are all tied together. Think about it in that way, like you're all buddies, mountain climbers, yoked together or tied together with the same string, and you're all going in the same direction. That's you and all of your cells, okay? Well, the sun or any star is similarly a very large consciousness. It's a consciousness that is so large that it is able to hold together not just 150 pounds worth of matter, but enormous, enormous, enormous amounts of matter. So please understand that the consciousness necessary to hold together in conglomeration that many atoms is very large. So we are looking at a very large being or entity of consciousness. This is an important distinction to make because in the modern industrial realm, most people are programmed with the scientific viewpoint that states that the sun and stars are nothing more than giant balls of thermonuclear fusion reaction, giant chemical reaction, chain reaction processes, and almost like a mechanism that is just up there in the sky emitting light. Mostly the scientific model does not take into account consciousness. Even the equations that scientists use to try to understand what is happening within a star are equations that have to do with time and space and particles and forces, but does not include consciousness or awareness. So I'm impeccable with language, and when I speak about these things, I talk about the fabric of space and time and consciousness, because we could say that the fabric of space and time is like an old-fashioned analog record that has different grooves or different patterns inlaid upon it, and that your consciousness, it is your awareness that is like the stylus or the needle on the record that actually accesses the information that is the raw possibility of what exists in the cosmos. Brief pause. So our sun and the stars in general are not just nuclear furnaces. They're not just big balls of hot gas. They are points of consciousness, and they are part of a stellar network of consciousness. So I have to really get into this now, because I've been listening to a lot of science-based videos that talk about the life cycle of a star. And, well, part of the challenge in humans observing stellar entities is time scale. Humans live for merely 100 years, if you're lucky, and stars live for billions of years. In fact, the smaller stars that tend to live the longest or have the longest lifespan and time span, lifespan through time, and we'll get into that, why exactly I'm choosing my words in that way, smaller stars can live for so many billions of years that the first of these small class of stars that were born in our universe, this particular version of the cosmos, those stars have not died yet. And they've been alive for at least 13 billion years or so, because their lifespan and time trajectory is so dilated, not one of them has ever died. They won't die for billions of years. So this is a theoretical prediction that is made. Science surmises that this will happen. And we're allowed to say, this is theorized, this is possibly going to happen. Calculations point to the likelihood of this happening. However, it has not actually happened yet, or has not actually been observed. That's the most impeccable thing to say, okay? So, but science does recognize that stars have a lifespan and a life cycle, just like you as an organic being, an organic living creature, have a lifespan and you have a metabolism. So science recognizes those two things about stars. So different types of stars have different lifespans. Ones that are less massive and smaller and emit less energy are more stable. They last for billions of years. Ones like our sun, which is considered to be in the mid-range, are relatively stable and can last for, let's say, up to 10 billion years. Stars that are super massive, very, very large, the larger and more massive a star becomes, the less stable it is, the more difficult it is to maintain its metabolism in balance. And those stars also use up they transform a huge amount of energy and fuel throughout their processes. So they have a lifespan of only a few mere millions of years. But all of that, even a star that lasts for millions of years, that is longer than recorded human history. It is longer than the amnesiac memory span of our present culture. And it makes it very difficult for little old humans to even conceive of or understand that when you look up at the sky during the day, you're looking at a giant living being up there, and at night, when you look at all of the distant stars, you're looking at a family of many, many living beings, some of whom are incredibly ancient. And also, of course, the light that is reaching us now is light that is from the far distant past, from deep antiquity. So just if we were just to utilize our physical eyeballs, what we are perceiving is a snapshot of what our universe was like a very long time ago. So this is also the challenge in forming a conversation or having a respectful interaction with a being that is at the stellar level, because when are we receiving the information? So if information is sent out and then it has to cross all of interstellar space and it takes 1 billion years to get to us, and then we finally respond or, have a thought based upon what we have received in terms of just pure physical light, that's a very slow conversation. It's like, someone calling you on the phone and saying hello, and it takes 1 billion years for the first syllable to reach your ears. That is a very long conversation. So this is the challenge in how you, as a being that lives at the time scale of 100 years, can interact effectively with a being that lives at a time scale of millions or billions of years. How can you even have an effective conversation? How can you share information with a creature of that magnitude? And also, how can they understand your personal life experience and what is happening at your magnitude? So first of all, understanding the challenges of timescale and human perception and your biology is dictating a lot of your presumptions about cosmology and the setup of the world. And biology is even dictating the language that you use to speak about stars in terms of their luminosity or magnitude. So, before telescopes were even invented, humans developed this classification for stars and their brightness and luminosity. It's all based upon the human eye and how your eyes function. Your eyes are not linear, they're algorithmic in the way that they perceive light. So also now instruments have been created that measure all of the emanations of a star, but not consciousness yet, but emanations such as gamma rays or X-rays or higher frequency rays than can be perceived by a human eye. Yet the classification system still is based upon your human biology. So none of that makes sense in terms of understanding, like, how do we understand the stars and group them together and understand the energy exchange or the flow of energy that is happening amongst them throughout space. It is not effective to have the parameters of those perceptions be dictated by your physical instrument of perception, which is what has happened so far. So it must be understood that stars are portals of perception of a much larger being, and the larger being is the galactic consciousness. And Each galaxy is an individuation, and each of those individuals add up to create a totality. And I was trying to think of an effective metaphor that I could use for this on the radio program, and I thought of an idea of grass versus lawn, because one little blade of grass behaves differently than an entire field of grass, and you experience a field of grass very differently than a single individuation. And a field of grass certainly works together. All of their roots are intertwined, they share nutrients, they're like a carpet, they all work together. Brief pause. This is the idea of individuated consciousness gaining new qualities as individuals add up to a totality. So although it would be very difficult and uncomfortable for you to walk barefoot balanced upon one single blade of grass, it is very lovely and very comfortable. It's a wonderful sensation to walk barefoot on a large field of many blades of grass. So humans have individuated consciousness right now in this time and place, and have that aspect of themselves is affecting their perception of stars, and are looking at stars as individuated things, not submerged within context or connected as a network. However, when you begin to truly perceive accurately, you will see that stars are connected as a stellar network of consciousness. And this would be like when a blade of grass becomes joined up with its brethren and becomes a field or a lawn. So all of these points of consciousness are adding up together in the same way. I've used this analogy and it really works, that many instruments add up together to create a symphony. And this is also the idea of specialization and a variety of sounds, or a variety of vibrations, if we are to be perfect with the use of language. Stars emanate different vibrations. Science, again, based in the human biological realm, is looking at them according to the visual spectrum, and notices some stars emit more yellow light, some stars emit more blue light. This is like saying that different instruments in the symphony emit different frequencies, and that when all of the frequencies are played at the right time or in the right sequence, they nest together perfectly, and this is known as music, or this is known as the harmonic structure of consciousness as it flows throughout the cosmos. So to clarify, stars have different masses. Some of them don't have very much mass and have very long lifespans. Some of them have a middle amount of mass and, relatively middling lifespans. And some of them are so supermassive that they have relatively short lifespans and relatively volatile endings. Those largest stars are the small proportion of stars, the tiny percentage, that will become supernovae, and those are the circumstances under which heavier elements, like the elements that make up your body, and gold and silver and uranium, are created. So first of all, this is the understanding that, okay, let's rewind a little bit first. The understanding that stars are making matter, and they are also emitting light. This is an amazing thing, because we understand that there is a relationship between matter and energy, or matter and light. And when we experience stars, we experience their emanations. We experience sunlight is falling upon my face, or sunlight is entering my eye, or even sunlight is making a plant grow and I then eat that plant. These are all about the light and the consciousness force that is emanating from the sun. However, during other aspects of a star's life cycle, it does other things. So during the end of a star's life, when it begins to be an incredibly superheated, dense place, it can change matter or create matter, depending upon how we would like to define this. Can take atoms that are in one format and change their format so that they become a different type of matter. And that can only happen inside of a star, and that can only happen inside of certain stars under certain circumstances. So it's like saying, if you want to have the element of gold or the element of uranium, you have to get together this much mass, this many atoms, and get it to coalesce into a giant supermassive star, which then has to live for millions and millions of years and go through all sorts of chemical and, thermal reactions inside of itself until finally one day it becomes super and dense and heated enough to actually cause these changes to happen. And the supernova is the explosion at the end of this entire process that spreads those elements outward throughout the galaxy so that they can be utilized in new projects like building organic life. So the whole point of this is to tell you that the symphony of the stars, all of these different stars, all of the different types of stars, and their lifespan, and the cascade of consciousness that is their lifespan, that these are all necessary. They are perfectly timed and fused together in a harmonic state so that life can occur. I've defined in the past life as when matter conforms and energy conforms to these patterns of flow, the harmonic structure of the way that matter and energy should flow in the cosmos. It's what I paint. We could call it the vibratory language of the cosmos, and it is a shape of mathematically nested fractal symmetrical structures. The structures of the torus, the structures of your chakras or non-physical energy centers, which are comprised of timelines, the shape of Earth's magnetosphere, and the shape of the sun's heliosphere. These are all the harmonic patterns of the cosmos. And the sun's heliosphere, this is an envelope, giant aura that surrounds the star, that it goes far past the edges of Pluto, the furthest planet, and is like a protective shield. Just like Earth has a magnetosphere that is a protective shield that protects Earth from too much solar radiation and space debris and other things like that, so too does the sun have a protecting and encompassing shield that encompasses the entire solar system. It's incredibly large. It would be considered the sun's body, like the outer edge of the sun's body. And the sun's consciousness literally protects the inner planets from radiation that is from interstellar space and debris that is just flying around from interstellar space. If all of that was not diverted or diminished, it would be very difficult for organic life to arise on the inner planets, because that life would be constantly disrupted by radiation and things like asteroids and meteors and comets, and the delicate balance of trying to cultivate a garden of organic life here would constantly be thrown out of balance by the introduction of these new variables and these new elements. So the sun is a protective consciousness and emits this force field of protection that helps to make organic life possible. And so much more, because the star, the sun, is our parent in the sky. So, but wait, I want to finish that topic and not move around too much because I have so much to say. We experience the emanations of the sun, that is the light that comes off of the sun. And at the same time, stars are making matter, and this balance of emanating light and creating matter and then at the very, very end of their life cycle, backflipping into themselves or becoming so condensed and crushed by their own weight of their own, or sucked in by their own gravity, that this consciousness then does the very last thing, which is create a doorway back to the singularity. And the singularity I've spoken about extensively on these broadcasts. I define it as the 0th dimension. 0 not because it is less valuable than the other dimensions, but because it takes 0 amount of information to describe one's position in that place. It is 0 because everything is there. Science describes the singularity as the place where all of the rules of the physical realm break down. Science also describes it as a place where time stops. So we are third-dimensional beings submerged within the 4th dimension, experiencing the flow of time. And the flow of time is our, needle of awareness riding along the groove of the record of our timelines. Hey, where do those timelines come from? Answer, they are emanated by the source. Hey, where does light come from? Answer, it is emanated from the sun, our nearest star. Stars are emanators not only of light, stars are emanators or emanatrixes of consciousness, of awareness, of possibilities and probabilities. So the sun created the planets. Each planet is like a ray of consciousness that has been refracted from the primary ray, which is the star at the center of our solar system. Astrology, not astronomy, astrology, the narrative and mythological story that humans use to describe their context within the stars, within the stellar context, is an anthropomorphic interpretation of this basic truth, that each star has a personality like a character, a set of characteristics and a sense of individuation. So it has a sense of self that is unique compared to other stars, has a unique recipe, and each star, when it creates planets, breaks up that recipe of who they are into a new and unique format. And all of this is done so that the star can come to know its own aspects of consciousness better. This is like saying when we dream, we dream at night in order to better explore the contents of our own interior mind, emotions, consciousness, and connection to that which is greater. And the planets are the dream of the star. The star is an enormous consciousness that had the capacity to gravitationally pull together many, many molecules. Just like you managed to have enough gravitas to pull together enough molecules to make a fetus and to get your consciousness to reside within that fetus. So a star did the same thing. Guess what? Just like not all lovemaking creates the conception of a fetus, not all coalescing of nebulae in the cosmic level, on the stellar level, results in the birth of a star. Sometimes there's not enough matter and it does not actually become a star. Quite amazing, right? Then it becomes a brown dwarf. So the capacity to gather together enough matter in order to contain consciousness. The understanding that the consciousness is a recipe that contains various elements in different proportions, and then the refraction of those elements into different individuated planets upon which life can be expressed either biologically or inorganically. And this is tough because humans are wearing biological bodysuits and have defined life according to their own structures and do not necessarily notice things that are similarly alive but not on a biological level or on an anthropomorphic level. So let's talk about something like a lichen, a tiny microcellular organism that breaks down minerals as part of its life cycle, as part of its metabolism and feeding. It's kind of like a plant, but not exactly like a plant. And there are beings that are gaseous beings that have a metabolism in that they ingest energy and excrete energy. But they do not have defined edges. So, human beings have defined edges. Very clear, this is your skin, and what is outside of your skin is quote-unquote not you, and what is inside of your skin is quote-unquote you. Let's use the planet Jupiter as an example. Jupiter as a planet is called a gas giant. It is a less dense planet. So in terms of consciousness, many people that are understanding as part of, the New Age awakening, they talk about the third level of density. You're at this dense level. Well, beings that live on Jupiter, consciousness that resides on the planet Jupiter, live within a less dense realm. Jupiter's planet doesn't have a surface, doesn't have a defined boundary. Jupiter is made out of many, many fields and bands of whirling and swirling gas. And the metabolism of a gas being would be like saying there's a flow of gas from here to here. It's like a cloud. And if you are a being with hard edges, it can be very difficult to look at a being that's shaped like a cloud and understand it as life imbued with consciousness. That is exactly what we are perceiving when we perceive Jupiter. All of the bands that are just considered to be cloud bands, like, the way that the jet stream just creates clouds on Earth. And I'm being a bit sarcastic with my tone of voice here, because the cloud beings on Jupiter are conscious. Their clouds can be containers for consciousness on Jupiter. Clouds can also be containers for consciousness on Earth. And there are certainly beings of consciousness that reside only in the level of the atmosphere and the stratosphere. And they exist within the water vapor and clouds that circulate at that level of Earth, and they do not ever reach the surface of Earth. They live at a less dense realm. Some people have named them sylphs, S-Y-L-P-H-S. I think it's perfectly acceptable to call them cloud beings and to understand that clouds can be containers for consciousness. Water can be programmed in terms of the work of Dr. Emoto, or understanding that voice and intention and vibration can affect the molecular structure of water, and that the molecular structure of water has an impact upon any biological organism that is comprised of water, such as you or I, and that clouds themselves are comprised of water. So it is not that much of a hop, skip, and a jump away to understand that clouds can be giant, floating programs of water that has been affected by vibrations. So stars also have a metabolism. Just like your body has a homeostasis, the need to maintain an energy flow coming into it and going out of it in order to maintain life. Stars and our sun also have a metabolism, a flow of energy, of how quickly or how intensely they must process energy within themselves in order to maintain their structure. So in stars, it is a balance between the emanation of what they send out and the gravitational tendency to collapse inward. Science describes this as a pressure a pressure of light that is emanating outward. I would describe it as consciousness. Consciousness is flowing outward from the star. And the consciousness is in terms of awareness, an I am presence that says I understand. It is also in terms of possibilities and probabilities. So just in the very basic sense, stars send out photons. Photons are little packets of light, and light is awareness. In other broadcasts, I ask you to do the, thought challenge or the yoga of the mind, the thought gymnastics, to interchange when I use the word light to also use the word information or consciousness or awareness, because literally the photons that are coming off of our sun and out of stars are little tiny pieces of awareness. They're like similar to a bat that uses sonar in order to understand its surroundings. Bats send out a wave, the sonar, that hits the surfaces of its context, bounces back in a slightly different form. And bats calculate the difference between what I sent out versus what I received, and then by doing that, build a picture of the world around them. Stars do the same thing. Stars send out photons, or packets of information, packets of awareness. And some of those packets of awareness travel infinitely. If you send out a piece of light and it doesn't ever hit matter, if it is never perceived by an eyeball, if it never stimulates anybody's retina, and if it is never acted upon by gravity, something like a black hole, that piece of light or wave of light will just continue endlessly in a straight line. That would be like saying, you went out on a road trip and just went out and kept on going and never stopped. However, some light gets coalesced into matter. And this is when, light falls on a leaf that has a chloroplast. Some of that light gets turned into an actual physical structure on Earth and then gets eaten by a cow or a person or a cat. And sometimes light bounces off of a physical object and enters into my retina. And I have waylaid that photon on its journey. It's amazing because that photon would have traveled for billions of years if I hadn't interfered by looking at it. And now it's stuck inside of me. It's a part of my mental processes. It stimulated my retina, and it got turned into an electrical neurological impulse, and it became a part of my mind. And this is everything that we are looking at that is becoming a part of your mind. So that's only the first part of the biofeedback loop, what the sun or a star sends out. Because you are consciousness. There is also what you broadcast back to the star. This is the other aspect of the echolocation, the sonar qualities of a bat sending out waves and then receiving them back in order to understand context. We as living beings are emanations of the star, and we are meant to broadcast in real time our consciousness experience of utilizing all of this light. Everything that we are comes from the stars. Not only the heavy elements that our body is made from, so everything, carbon in order to make your body and all of that, calcium for your bones, all of that was made within the, it's called a furnace, but I don't really think of it in that way, but the intense levels of density and heat of a star that is going into the supernova realm. And that's, a star that has already died or gone on its trajectory of consciousness. And the star that is currently in the sky emanating this dream is the next generation after that other star that died. So this broadcast is all about birth of a new dimension and how can we understand the stellar network of consciousness. So first of all, there are many generations of stars. Some of the generations of stars were born at the beginning of time, and they haven't ever died. Some of them had to die in a mere couple of millions of years so that they could emit all sorts of wonderful things like carbon so that biological life such as you and I could exist. And our present star that coalesced and created all the planets around us is just the most recent chapter of a journey of consciousness. Just like you and I have many, many lifetimes and lifespans, and we are on a journey of refinement, it is the same with stars. Stellar consciousness is on a journey of refinement. That means that a being that is being refined, it doesn't know everything. It is here to learn. It's also like saying, like, I'm an artist. What makes a painting interesting for me to paint is that there's something for me to explore. There's something new for me to learn. I don't know exactly what it's going to look like at the end. I don't know exactly what these colors will look like when I place them together. That is what stars are. Stars are creators of consciousness. They are creators of timelines. They are artists of reality. And we are emanations of stars, and we're in divine co-creative partnership. We've been given this physical matter, this physical bodies, and the physical food to eat, and the neurological electrical impulses that flow throughout us, and the photons that enter into our eyeballs and into our minds, in order to have these experiences that literally are refining consciousness. We are helping the sun and the stars as a network to learn more about themselves by having these experiences, okay? So I would like the focus going forward, Birth of a New Dimension, to be on this stellar network of consciousness and to take some of the focus away from the various space races who are denizens or inhabitants of planets. Because here's all that you need to know. Planets are emanations of their star. So each star has its own, particular star system, its own particular flavor, its own particular planets, and its own particular interior drama, the dream of that star. When you go to sleep at night, you dream. You dream about your own personal stuff, what you did during the day and your thoughts and feelings and where you went, or perhaps you invent something completely new. Earth and Jupiter and Saturn and everything going on in our solar system, this is all the dream of Sol. It's all the dream of the sun. This moment right now that I am within, my body, my entire lifespan up to right now, and that is truthful for all of you and all of human history and all of Earth history. This is all a dream of a very, very enormous, large being. And the being is a being made of time. So stars have a lifespan. They have a limited time span. Stars are limited by how much light / consciousness / awareness / possibilities and probabilities they can emanate. And that limitation is programmed in or born into them when they are coalesced based upon how much matter they have. This is part of the interrelationship between matter and energy, or matter and light, or matter and consciousness. A star's lifespan is essentially determined by how much matter it has, how much raw materials it has, and how much time it can emit based upon those raw materials. I'm going to say that again. How much time can a star emit based upon those raw materials? This is not just a question of a thermonuclear reactor that is shining like a light bulb shining in the sky. We're bringing in the idea of consciousness and creating possibilities and probabilities. Literally, timelines. The songs that are the songs of your life, my life, all of our lives. These are songs that are emanated by the stars. The only reason they can emanate those songs is because they got together a lot of atoms to work together, not to be tiny one-celled organisms and be anarchists and say, I work for number one, but instead to gather together and work together. Matter acts differently when you get a lot of it to work together. So that's a very good segue into what happens when stars run out of time, or when stars run out of fuel, even though I don't really think of them as giant combustion chambers. When they do not have enough mass anymore, stars come to the end of their lifespan in a variety of fashions. The whole point is that at a certain point, the dream of a star ends, and the ability to emanate outward, that pressure that science describes as light emanating outward, is time emanating outward. And when a star is at the end of its lifespan, that pressure releases or diminishes, and all of that energy rushes inward towards its interior, towards its center, towards its own innate divine connection. Instead of the star's attention being focused on its context, what is happening around me? It's like saying, your eyes are open and you're looking at the room around you. I'm looking at my cat. I'm looking at a window. I'm looking at a painting. Instead of that, closing your eyes, turning your attention inward, and going endlessly in that direction. That is what happens at the end of a star's lifespan. Just like you or I undergo an evolution or a change or transition of consciousness, and our bodies end up looking different, and our minds or perceptive vehicles go to a different place, the same thing happens with a star. The same thing happens with a sun, and that is called a black hole. When a star backflips into itself and stretches the fabric of time, space, and consciousness to an infinite amount, that is known as the singularity. It creates the zeroth dimension. And remember from my description, there is only one zeroth dimension. It's not like there are many singularities. There's actually only one singularity. That's the definition. By definition, the word single means one. It means oneness. Singularity means oneness. And there's the singularity inside of every star, inside of every planet, inside of every atom, inside of you at the direct center of your consciousness perception, inside of each one of your chakras. And if you are able to understand that basic premise and embody it, it is a profound change in your perception, because you understand that there are many doorways to infinity, but they all lead to the same room. There are many doorways or many different windows, all to get into the same house. And that house contains all consciousness. You, me, all plant life, all mineral life, all space races, all possibilities smeared out across the cosmos on every other single possible timeline, every single possible version of you, every life that you've ever lived, every single photon that you've ever captured on your retina. All of those consciousnesses and aspects of consciousness are all in one place. That is what the singularity is. So the black hole that a star becomes at the end of its lifespan is a doorway to that infinite place. And each one of us also has a doorway to that infinite space within us. We know this because we came through that doorway to come into this level of density, and we will go through that doorway in order to exit this level of density. So just like your consciousness is on a trajectory from the source, a place of a less dense realm, you came into the physical realm, into a conglomeration of physical matter, physical cells known as a body, and had a lifespan. At the end of your lifespan, your trajectory will continue into a different realm. The same thing is happening with stars. Stars are consciousness that has come into this physical realm, created a physical body out of many, many atoms, emanated all of these timelines, possibilities, and probabilities that we experience as the solar system and organic life and the billions of years of observable astronomy. All of the calculations that we can make that says a star was over here and then it orbited over here and now it's over here. all of that is what happens when this consciousness coalesces into the realm of actual matter and has all of these wonderful adventures over billions of years. And then, at the end of its journey, it backflips into itself and goes on its journey to the next place. And all of these experiences that we have had, your individual life experience of waking up in the morning and making a cup of coffee, is part of the sun's or the stellar network trajectory of consciousness. That a plant grew because it collected enough photosynthesized material to make a bean that you could actually roast and make into an extraction and drink it in the morning as a cup of hot fluid and use it to nourish your organic physical cellular structure. It's beyond miraculous. It's abstract to the point of just being incredibly profound that you're able to even do that. And the star that gave you all of the raw materials for that uses the experience, even something simple and mundane as drinking a cup of coffee, as the fuel for its trajectory on its journey of refinement. And I hope it makes sense. You live over many lifetimes. Within your lifetime, you also experience the refinement of consciousness. Stars live over many lifetimes. Some stars in our universe were born and died and emitted all sorts of things like calcium and gold. And their consciousness continued on its journey and got born into a different stellar format and created a new dream and created new things. The last thing to understand here is that there's no separation. There's no distinction. It is a network. So just like your computer, if you are connected to the internet, your computer is an individuated, quote-unquote, brain connected to a larger network of consciousness. And even if your computer doesn't have programmed into it all of the answers to every question that ever has been asked, if you're connected to the internet, you have access to all of that. So your individual computer's memory can be limited. However, by being on a network, you can have access to an unlimited or virtually unlimited amount of information. Well, that is what the stellar network is. And also the stellar network is based in unconditional love. I've described before that unconditional love is literally a tone, just like a musical note. I'm turning on my piano here so I can make a little musical note. Unconditional love is literally a musical tone, not an airy-fairy or romantic ideal of feeling attracted to someone or wanting to hug or kiss someone. It is an energetic tone that is created by an equal amount of giving and receiving. So when you are submerged in time and you are not grasping forward for the future or clinging to the past and you are merely submerged in the present, observing, using your senses and not judging anything, you are creating the tone known as unconditional love. You are also a clear conduit and a broadcaster of your real-time experience to the star, the sun, that is your nearest local broadcaster of consciousness. When you are in the tone of unconditional love, you are giving your experience back to the sun. I've spoken before about how the hacked operating system, known as the human mind, that does all this chattering and verbalization, has the tendency to cut oneself off from the source of consciousness and information and the stellar network of consciousness because it takes us out of the moment. Usually we are not able to be good real-time broadcasters when we are running our motor mouths or thinking with our verbalized minds because it creates friction. It creates a little bit of a disturbance of us not fully being in the now. And that's not how our bodies and minds were designed. That is an artifact from the disruption and destruction of our genetic code, and it will be relieved and diminished as we reintegrate and reintertwine our genetic code into the format it's supposed to be. So I just had a few more minutes left for this, but let's say this. You are an emanation of the sun. We are living out aspects of the sun's dream. The earth is another aspect of dream. She is dreaming this dream along with the sun. So all of the organisms that live on earth are expressions of this dynamic union between the earth and the sun. And the genetic structure is the thought structure that is expressing the possibilities and probabilities within each organism. I've spoken before about how an external influence, not from within this solar system, came along and had an impact on the genetic structure of humans that now live on Earth. That's like saying something that was dreamed up by a different star in a different place, dreaming a different dream, got into a clank metal spaceship and flew all the way across interstellar space and got into this dream and started affecting the inhabitants of this dream. And that is the challenge that we have been facing for all of what is described as human history, all of the past 5,000 years. I say roughly the past 10 or 12,000 years in terms of Earth's surface human culture and consciousness that is here. And this is not the way that things are supposed to be made, because the stars within a galaxy are not supposed to be fighting with each other. That's like the cells of a body fighting within the body. And if you have that, we would describe that as a disease. If your heart cells start to attack your liver cells, we'd say, that's not right. These are all part of the same body. They should all be working together. So indeed, why should beings from one star system want to oppress or denigrate or take freedom or consciousness away from beings from another star system? And if they're both part of the same galaxy, why would they not be working towards the totality? These are really good questions to answer, and this is the very experience that we have been having within the Milky Way galaxy, that there are beings that live on planets that are emanations of particular stars that are not living within the harmonic structure of consciousness as it flows in the cosmos, and that they are acting outside of, they're like bad musicians who are not playing the notes they're supposed to play, and that experience has all been distilled down to your personal experience on Earth and the social and economic experience of Earth's surface culture. It's a big topic. There's a lot more to speak about. I will continue speaking about it next week. Thank you. Please continue to tune in.